Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to /IDontWorkHereLady, where silly Karens keep confusing regular customers as workers, and the stories are absolutely ridiculous. And in today's episode, it's another wild one. We've got elderly couples who think everyone should do their bidding, psycho Walmart customers, and one power-tripping army officer learns that not everyone needs to serve him. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories today. Don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So I used to work for NCR, which stands for National Cash Register Company, and Walmart is one of their biggest customers. So I spent a lot of time in there fixing registers, self-checkouts, back office IT equipment, you name it. I immediately learned to stop wearing my company's blue shirts with khaki pants. It didn't matter though. People would see my lanyard or even see the NCR logo on the left breast of my shirt and still think I worked for Walmart. That said, I'm going to share 3 of my most memorable experiences. The first is when I had to change out something in the network office in the back. It was the end of the day, and when I was done with that ticket, my day was over. As I was walking through the store to leave, I saw Kristen, a friend of mine from a previous job. As we stood there catching up, this woman came over and she stood right at us watching us talk. Kristen finally asked if she needed something. The woman then points at me and she said, "Yeah, we need to get into a dressing room. They're locked." And I, dressed in all black, said, "I don't work here." The woman then laughs and says, "Huh, funny, but we really do need to get into a dressing room." That's when I say, no, seriously, I don't work here. You'll need to go find a Walmart employee." She then starts swearing at me and told me to do my job. And that's when I said, "Look, lady, for the 3rd effing time, I don't work for Walmart." She swore at me some more and then said it was ridiculous how employees don't want to work. That's when my friend jumps in and she said, "She told you 3 times she doesn't work here. Are you having a stroke or what? You don't understand plain English?" It didn't matter though. The woman was still insisting I was lazy. She called me a few names and then asked where my supervisor is. I just said, "Don't you get mad at me because you're too dumb to see that my shirt doesn't say Walmart." She started marching through the store screaming that Walmart employees refused to help her. Another time, as I was walking through, I hear a woman say, "There's someone, let's ask them." As she followed me saying, "Excuse me," I just kept on walking. Finally, she runs up on me and she pushes me from behind. And she said, "Hey, we've been trying to get your attention and you just keep ignoring us. We need help." I told her, 1, I didn't work there, and 2, don't you effing touch me again. She then said, "So that Walmart on your shirt don't mean nothing?" I just pointed to it and I said, "Does that really look like it says Walmart?" The woman immediately looks embarrassed and she turned to walk the other way. I just said, "That's right, don't apologize." Another one that popped in my head was for Sam's Club, which is still owned by Walmart, at one of their new, smaller self-checkouts. It was roped off, and I had the register closed sign up while working on it. It was Christmas time, and the lines were full. Out of nowhere, someone starts yelling, "Hey, are you gonna open up or what? Or do you just want to be lazy your whole shift?" This person was screaming "hey" over and over again. I was busy installing software, so not really paying attention until some guy who I assumed was her boyfriend or husband or whatever comes over. And he slaps the counter multiple times saying, "Hey, she's yelling at you." At that, I just look up and I said, "I don't work here. I'm repairing this unit." The woman then screams, "Well, F you. You could have said something earlier while I was making a fool of myself yelling at you." I just said, "I'm pretty sure that's not my fault. You did that yourself." The woman kept on with obscenities and literally wanted to fight me until another customer told her to shut up. I probably have a couple hundred stories similar to these. Many times, I'd have a register in pieces on the belt, with a "this line is closed" sign on the back of the belt, and someone would still put their items on the belt waiting to be checked out. I stopped saying, "This register is closed," to be nice, because I'd still get snapped at for letting them put their items on the belt, telling me to check them out anyways. The answer's always the same: I don't work here, you idiot. I keep the idiot part to myself though, but you can bet your sweet behind that I would love to say that out loud. Wouldn't we all, OP? Like, there are so many insufferable people everywhere, it's wild. And seriously, I've said it many times and I will continue to say it. I have so much respect for people who work customer service, retail, anything that has to deal with customers on a daily, because people be stupid. And this person comments, "I used to be a Wally World manager. I feel for you." The number of times a customer complained to me that one of my workers was refusing to work was ridiculous. Invariably, they pointed at somebody wearing a Pepsi logo, Frito-Lay's, NCR, whatever the local tobacco vendor was. It was so dumb. I even had one customer complain that the Loomis delivery driver wouldn't open a register. Loomis delivered cash, and they had guns on their hips. Like, how do you miss that? And there were still a small number that wouldn't believe me that they were not Wally World workers. Like, some people are just denser than a Christmas fruitcake. Ain't that the truth? And guys, while we're on the topic of Karens forcing people to open checkout lanes because they're more important than others, listen to this next post. So this happened several years ago. I was shopping at Garden Ridge, which sold household items, decor items, gifts, and craft supplies. It was a huge store with 2 entrances and 2 sets of checkout lanes, 1 set at each entrance. I was just casually shopping when a woman in her 50s or 60s gets right in front of my cart, and the woman looks mean. The woman just glares at me, and I tried to go around her, but she stopped me again saying, "Are you going to help me or not?" I said, "What?" She then says, "I need a register opened so I can check out. Why is there only 2 open right now?" I just look at her astounded. I then say, "I don't work here, but there are registers open at the other entrance." To which she replied, "I don't want to walk to those registers. They are way too far. Now open one and check me out." Hearing her say that, I looked at her in the eye and I said sternly, "I don't work here." The woman just throws her hands up in the air and she starts walking away. As she was walking away, she turns and yells at me, "This isn't over." I just ignored her. I grabbed the last couple of items I needed and I head to the registers to check out. I noticed the line wasn't moving, and all of a sudden, I could hear that awful woman's voice. The woman was arguing with the cashier. The cashier calls a manager over, and other people waiting in line were getting impatient, and it was showing. The manager arrived and instructed the cashier to open another register, so the rest of us, the sane people, could check out. At that, the woman loses it, screaming at the poor man. She says, "How come you open a register for them, but not for me?" The awful woman just yelled and yelled at the manager, and he replied, "Ma'am, you're at an open register right now. What can I help you with?" The woman just keeps going on. She says, "I wanted a register open at the other door, and one of your stupid workers refused to do it." The woman just kept babbling nonsense. That's when I raise my hand and I get the attention of the manager saying, "Yeah, that person was me," insinuating that I was a customer. The awful woman looked over at me at the same time the manager did, and she screams, "It was her. She wouldn't open a register for me, and then she said she didn't work here." The manager tells her, "Ma'am, she doesn't work here." She then yells, "Are you gonna help me or not?" To which he responds, "I'm trying to help you, but you haven't asked for something that I can help you with. If you want to check out, then I'll check you out." The awful woman then starts huffing and puffing, and she starts angrily putting her items on the counter, demanding a 50% discount on all of her items, which didn't happen. I was nearly done paying for my items at the other checkout lane when she was done paying for hers. The manager then hands her a receipt and told her to have a nice day. As the awful woman was walking towards the door, she paused, turned around, and then shouts, "I guess customer service is dead here. None of y'all like to work anymore." The manager shouts back, "Ma'am, you can call corporate and get it out of your system." I'm not going to allow you to disrespect me or my staff." The woman screams, "Oh, I'm definitely calling corporate, and I'm telling them everything that happened here today." I was walking past her and I said to her, "I'm sure that'll be rich. Tell them that you need to have your own personal checkout lane while you're at it." The woman looked at me red-faced and shaking, and she yelled, "F you, I plan on it." As I walked to my car, I was still in shock that someone could be so awful. So this happened to me earlier this month at Wally World, where I do my shopping all the time. Also, you need to know that I use a wheelchair to get around, as I can't stand for long periods of time without my legs going numb and being in pain. The store is also familiar to me, and I know the place pretty much inside out since I go there a lot. Occasionally, I do like to help other customers from time to time. Now, because I use a wheelchair, people tend to think that I'm short, but I'm not. When this happened, I was in the aisle by the bread looking for my usual brand. I come across this gentleman, and I don't know how it came up, but we start talking about breads and spreads, and I suggest a peanut butter brand that he should try. I wheeled him to where it was since I had time, and the guy thanked me. Not even 5 minutes later, I meet my first wild Karen, and oh boy, was it interesting. The woman says to me, "Ahem, you need to come help me find my items." I just told her, "Oh, no, miss, I don't work here. I just shop here, and from time to time, I like to help people out." Karen then replies, "Listen, this store is always hiring you cripples for extra work, so come and help me." Of course, I told her, "No, I don't work here, so please leave me alone." I then start to wheel myself away from her, and Karen gets angry. The woman actually grabs the back of my wheelchair, preventing me from going anywhere, and she yells, "You will help me or I am going to get you fired." I just scream at her and then turn around in my chair and stand up to my full 5'8" height, just towering over her. The woman backs up with her mouth open, looking at me in shock. Mind you, I'm a 52-year-old, hefty black woman who's very, very angry right now. The woman just backed off and she apologized real quick. She left quickly, and it's a good thing too because I can only stand for about 5 minutes at a time. And never again was I ever approached like that again. I just thought I'd share this with you because ever since my young son introduced me to you, I've been listening to these wild stories. I just love it. Listen, I think it's safe to say that Karen had a shock of a lifetime that day, and she'll probably think twice before doing something like that ever again. And I'm not gonna lie, guys, I wasn't expecting her to apologize, which is nice, but yeah, like what on earth was she thinking, putting her hands on somebody's wheelchair to stop them from going anywhere like that? Like, that is just so frickin' disrespectful, right? And that's grounds for a good butt kicking, in my opinion. Again, I love that OP literally stood up for herself against this wild Karen, and she scared the crap out of her. I'm a 39-year-old female, and I live in a smaller town. I also have 2 jobs. One's at a mom-and-pop hardware store, and another, I'm a theater carpenter. The first one pays the bills, and the second is for fun. This is relevant later. So one day, I'm working my theater carpenter job, and I'm shopping for lumber. And unfortunately, I have to go to Home Depot, as my hardware store doesn't carry a lot of lumber. So there I am, pushing a cart full of 2x4s and plywood. I'm wearing blue jeans, a white shirt, and a white canvas apron. The employees wear an orange apron. All of a sudden, I get a tap on my shoulder, and I turn to see a woman in her late 50s with a short haircut, and she's a Karen. The woman says to me, "When you get done putting away the wood, I need help finding something in the back." I just stop her mid-sentence and I say, "I'm sorry, miss, I don't work here." I then point to my apron and I say, "White apron, I'm a customer. Orange aprons are employees. There's one right there." I then point to an actual employee at the end of the aisle, and Karen says, No, I know you. You've helped me before in hardware. So just go to the back and check if they have I then stop her right there and I say, "Miss, you might remember me from this mom and pop hardware store, but I don't work at Home Depot. I can't just go to the back in this store." Now, I know this Karen, and she would come into my mom and pop shop and she would often demand every employee help her, and the woman would take forever to buy something under $10. Karen then says, "Listen, you work in that hardware store, so I'm sure they won't mind you helping out here, so just help me right now." At this point, I say sternly and maybe a bit rudely, "Did you comprehend what I just said? I don't work here, go away." As she walks away, I get to the self-checkout stand to pay for my stuff and leave before she comes back with a manager or something. I think that's the end of it, but no. 2 days later, back at the mom and pop hardware store, who walks through the door but Karen from before? She points at me and she says, You were rude to me. I'm gonna talk to your boss right now and get you fired." My boss, who is standing right behind me at that moment, turns around and says to me, "What did you do?" I then explain that I was at Home Depot shopping for lumber for the theater company I worked for, and I was in a hurry, so I refused to help her. Also, she asked me to go to the back. My boss then said, "Ma'am, I can't do anything about this. She was under no obligation to help you at that store. She needed to be on her way because she was on the clock for a different job." The frustrated woman then turns to leave, but before exiting, she says, "Fine, but she didn't have to be so rude about it. She was very, very rude to me. And that's the type of person that you are employing. You need to think twice about having her work for you. Didn't your mother teach you anything?" That's when I reply, yes, she did. She taught me you only have to be polite for the first 2 times. The 3rd time's optional. Have a nice day. Yeah, the post ends right there, guys, but I love how Karen was just grasping at anything to have OP canned from their job. Like, what a frickin' pathetic attempt to ruin someone's livelihood. Like, shame on you, Karen. I only wish there was more of this and that OP gave her a taste of her own medicine by showing up to Karen's workplace and trying to get her fired for being rude. Wouldn't that have been something? So this is more of a proxy "I don't work here, lady" and a thank you to everyone who posts such lively examples of Karens in the wild. So to set the scene, I was recently at a large grocery store that rhymes with flyer. They have really long grocery aisles that are split in the middle, with a perpendicular space for better flow through. I also go absurdly early in the morning because the music's played at a quieter volume and the only people out in the store are workers stocking the shelves and retirees who wake up before sunrise. Usually, I'm happy to help when asked nicely. Everything from pulling something heavy into a cart, reaching the top shelf, even laying on the floor to collect glasses that have been accidentally kicked beneath a shelf. The older regulars and I exchange idle pleasantries, and they know me as one of the usual people around. On this day, I'm in the cracker/cookie aisle, and a stock employee's pulling a large metal dolly towards the back of the store, with a stack of deconstructed boxes piled on it. Before she could get to the end of the aisle, 2 mobility scooters round the corner, and they block her path. And this wasn't accidental. It was clear that the scooters were lined up to intentionally block the entire aisle. It was a man and a woman. The man looked down at his phone, trying to ignore the madness, while the woman just smugly crossed her arms. She was the human embodiment of a sour grape. I'm towards the front of the aisle, but I can hear this lady exclaim that since the stock person works there, she must do this woman's shopping for her and has to be obeyed. The woman's shaking a paper grocery list at the stock person, and she has the exact same facial expression as the gif of the angry little girl shaking a hairbrush. Now, this poor stock person is trying to explain that she doesn't work in customer service, that she's simply there to stock shelves, but the grumpy grape isn't having it. Eventually, the stock person loudly states in frustration, "I don't have time for this." And she pushes the dolly backwards into the middle aisle gap, circumventing the blockade. Well, this retreat is met with flying obscenities and threats of talking to management, but the stock person moves quickly enough that the scooters can't reposition in time. I can hear the employee's dolly move down an unblocked aisle and into the back of the store, out of reach. Now, if you thought that was the end of it, oh dear reader, you are wrong. The woman then loudly exclaims, "We'll just get that other girl to help us." Hearing her say that, I almost instantly realize that I'm the only person left in the aisle, and I'm dressed very similarly to the stock person, jeans and t-shirt. For the briefest of moments, I did think about explaining to the woman that I did not work there. I did have a shopping cart after all. But here's the thing. The daunting stories that I've read and heard have taught me that sensible explanations often lead to conflict and sometimes even assault. This cantankerous woman could fill a Karen bingo card with her exploits. I knew my immediate peril and quickly moved in the opposite direction, making my way around the corner before she could even try to flag me down with her shopping list. The woman even tried to loudly snap her fingers like I was a dog. It was genuinely surprising how loudly she snapped her fingers with her dried up little witch hands. But that's probably due to a lot of practice from treating people like slaves. By the time I got to the self-checkout register, only the man was in the scooter and the woman was bagging and checking the groceries on her feet. I make no claims or assumptions about her physical capabilities, but I did think it was weird that she ditched the scooter somewhere instead of having someone scan her groceries for her. As I passed her register to do my own self-checkout, the woman gave me such a venomous stare. But thankfully, she kept most of the insults under her breath instead of choosing a confrontation. Now, you can call me a jerk for not helping my elders, but there was no way that I was gonna get involved with someone who wants me to gather her groceries while she yells at me. Yeah, I'm 1000% with OP on this one, and honestly, I don't think anybody would call OP a jerk for not helping that couple. Like, you've gotta be such a crappy person to have the most helpful of people not even want to help you. And I do believe that had the couple been nicer, OP may have actually helped them. That said though, elderly or not, that couple could have been way more respectful towards the employee of the store. Like, who wants to take time out of their day to help such a nasty person who sees no issue berating random strangers? So this happened a long time ago, and I thought I'd share. Back in 2002, I was doing contractor security in Kuwait. Tension was high during that time, and no soldier was allowed off base alone. Being someone who does security for military, they expect you to conform to the same grooming standards. Haircut, clean shave, all that stuff. And I was still very young at 23 years old. One evening, I went out to dinner with my girlfriend at a local Chili's. There was a table with some noticeable Americans, and they were definitely service members. I don't think anything of it, but apparently one of them was keeping an eye on me. Eventually, my girlfriend gets up to go to the bathroom, and I'm sitting there. And all of a sudden, someone starts speaking to me, and they're right behind me. The guy's older, maybe mid-30s to late 30s. The man says, "What's your name, son?" I turn to him, and I'm a bit rattled by someone approaching me, and I ask, "Why do you ask?" He then says, "Well, you seem nervous for me just asking you for a name. What unit are you with? You know you're not allowed off base alone, and judging by your age, you're not supposed to be off base at all." Now, I do look young. At 23 years old, I barely look 18 years old. I look like someone who's just out of basic training. I respond, "I'm a contractor." The man says to me, "I've worked with many contractors here, and none are your age." At this point, I start getting defensive, and I say, "Okay, why are you saying this to me?" The man then says, "Do you know who I am? I'm Officer so-and-so, and I work directly with the installation commander." I say, "Please leave me alone, I'm not in your military." At this point, he puts his hand on my shoulder, and he leans over to speak more. He then says, "Give me your ID." To which I say, "Get your effing hand off of me, this is assault." And that's when a second man intervenes, and he says, "What's the problem?" The first man says, "We have a young service member off base without permission." At this point, I stand up and I push his arm off my shoulder. I tell him, "Keep your hand off of me." A manager comes over and says, "You need to take your conversation outside, you're disrupting others." And this is when my date returns, and the girl asked, "What's going on?" I say to the manager, "Please call police. These people are bothering me and they're putting their hands on me." Right about now, the man's getting hostile and he starts screaming at me saying, "Give me your ID right now." I then pull out my wallet and my Kuwait civil ID. Every resident like myself has one, and US military do not. I tell him, "This is my ID. I'm a resident of Kuwait. I live here. I'm not in your effing military." To cut a longer argument short, the manager kicks us out. I grab my date and make a dart for the door. Outside, I tell her what's happening, and that's when the three men come outside. The same man says, "I'm not done with you." I start to walk away with my date, and he and one other man follow me. They write my license plate down, and I flip them off as I drove off. 2 days later, I get a call from my lieutenant telling me to see the security manager, who's wanting me to come to the office to speak with me about what happened. Come to find out, the person at the restaurant put a be on the lookout out for me and my vehicle. I told the security manager what happened, and he told me I could have handled it differently, and told me to go to the lobby to wait. He said, "The person who confronted you is coming to you now." So I did. I wait in the lobby, and the guy shows up in uniform with another man. And the other man said something priceless. He said, "Is that the soldier you were talking to at Chili's?" while pointing to me. The man just looked at me like he made a horrible mistake. After a bit of talking, which isn't adding much to the story, I never saw them again. Yeah, in my opinion, I think military bullies are the worst type, and with all the stories I've read, guys, I'm not surprised that this dude was throwing his tiny bit of power around, whether he was right or wrong. Also, OP adds that they didn't want to get law enforcement involved that night because it could have meant more problems for him and his date. As in Kuwait, for all who don't know this, you are not allowed to date. Guys, let me know your thoughts on that one. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /IDontWorkHereLady. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy, crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/IDontWorkHereLady, another one because you guys love these so much, where a psycho Karen boss learns that they don't own all the employees. It's such a wild episode, so go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.